in terms of the loss of manpower due to the death and incarceration of a lot of black men on this dreaded drug. The stress imposed upon the family group has been destructive. The chaos in our lives will remain unless we implement some other methods that could prove to be more effective against the plague of cocaine addiction. And we must let it be known that cocaine and drug addiction is a plague. It is a disease. It requires special treatment. We need a fresh approach. We don't need to have a lock them up or lock them all up solution. We need to deal with addiction as a disease. And it is biological warfare. Let it be known that these drugs attack the very cells of our bodies. They actually rearrange the genetic makeup of our DNA. We actually become other than ourselves under the influence of these chemicals. Well, we have someone with us here tonight who is going to instruct us in the science of recovery from these deadly designer drugs. We all can use this knowledge, whether we use cocaine or not, as I said, because the reality is that we all know someone who is on this drug. So without further elaboration and with great respect, Razak's Books and the Community of Trenton, New Jersey presents our brother and our advisory physician, Dr. Llaila Afrika.
It's a pleasure always to be here and share what little I know about such things. We're going to go through addictions, primarily all types of addictions. They were taught to us long ago. They called it the addictive complex, universal addictive. It's used primarily with addicting people to anything you want them to do, be that slavery or gambling or reading or exercising or whatever the addiction you want, because all addictions are not negative. Just if you think of addictions as negative, but most addictions we have are positive. It takes just as much energy to break a good habit as it does to break a bad habit. But we think that you got to have this extra energy to break a bad habit, but you once had a good habit and you broke it and it became a bad habit, and then when you reverse it, it's the same energy. But we are again trained to think a certain way, so the addiction stays manifests in our system. What happens is we don't have the right language to deal with our bodies or our health. We have an addictive language. We have a dependent language that puts us in a dependent position. We deal with our health that way. If we want something done to our health, we have to go to someone else. We're always in this kind of dependent kind of position. We don't empower ourselves, control ourselves. And we also have to switch language when we get away from this dependency state. The addictions are many, but they all have the same fundamental foundation. I'm going to share some of them with you. This is what usually happens at the end process of all addictions. We become totally dependent in an infantile state. State we were in when we were born. Now we reverse the whole process and become totally dependent once again. And this is when we call for help, and want our mother to bring us something, and someone to write us a letter, and someone to bring us fruit. And actually it was our fault from the beginning. But now everyone is supposed to stop what they're doing and come and see about us after we didn't abuse ourselves all along the trail, even though we were given warning signals about it. With most of the addictive substances are risk, total risk, but we don't realize that. Like this Prozac thing. It's very popular. Diuretics are most popular when it comes to depressants, Prozac. But with all drugs comes this risk with them, which is known as the poisonous effect, which is known as the killing effect. And as you can see, there's been a 45% increase in deaths caused directly by Prozac. We overlook these things, and we keep taking these harmful substances, even though they're quite toxic. Prozac, like many drugs, be the drug white sugar, or the drug bleach white flour, or the drug sex, whatever the drug is, works by changing our melanin centers. All drugs must work by destroying melanin. Prozac stops our ability to use a hormone called serotonin. It stops serotonin reuptake, which means it stops the ability to be black. Now with that comes psychology. We are taught to think a certain way. And when you start thinking out of your nature and inside of someone else's nature, aside from being out of your mind and into their mind, which we say the person is out of their mind, which is correct. They're not in their own mind. When you start placing yourself in someone else's mind, this is what happens. You have this total increase of suicides amongst black children with the more they're taught the white psychological dynamics, which we use white psychology all the time. We relate to each other in a white psychology fashion. We dress that way, we speak that way. And with that psychology, it causes us to be out of our nature, distort ourselves. And that's the key to addiction. You must distort your reality, which distorts yourself. And when you try to come back to your reality, it becomes very frustrating. And the person usually commits suicides. That's why you have a 300% suicide rate with children who take Ritalin, which is in itself is a drug and in itself is addictive. And people don't seem to understand that with people dying from medicine, or dying from suicide, or dying from murder, be it Tupac, children go through a grieving reaction. They actually are moaning, and no one is helping them with this grieving reaction. So they seek out a way to help themselves. They start medicating themselves, and when they can't get that, they just start killing each other because they're acting out of that grief reaction. I'm hurt, so I'm going to hurt someone so they can share my hurt. And you get this high amount of murders with the youth. And all of this is related now. The problem is we don't see it as a relationship. We don't see that a drug addiction, violence addiction, food addiction, sex addiction is all part of being a colonized people. You can't have a colonized people without drug addiction, sex addiction, violence addiction. This is what colonized people do. This is what the people do in England, in Sweden, in France. They have a high rate of murder, a high rate of suicide because they are colonized. And when you're colonized, this is how you behave. A colonized people, of course, is the people that do not own or control their own land. Now what happens is, because of the drugs that are put into the child, either drugs, sugar, or Prozac, or Ritalin, our children now are treated like criminals. The children don't trust each other. In elementary school, they don't know if the other child has a weapon or may go off with them. The teachers don't trust the children, so we have our black children now going to be metal detectors. And this is conditioning the mind to seek for a solution to their problem outside of their mind and into someone else's mind. Again, we're distorting reality. I'm trying to give you a background on this and let you know that this is not just an individual problem. This is manifests a whole social problem. This is caused directly by psychology, and the food industry, and the medicine industry. Totally responsible for it. Because the medications that people use, be it alcohol, Tylenol, induces these kind of things, mental illness. All physical diseases, be they addictions or non-addictions, are accompanied by a mental disease. The biggest victims of all of this are the elderly, the black elderly. They are the highest drug-addicted percentage in our population. They're the ones who are the highest on alcoholism, violence, spousal abuse. It's the elderly. At the end of this journey, if you make it, you're going to be a drug addict if you're black. Legal. Now, there's certain things you just have to do. And this is like a self-defense kind of kit I have right here. A certain amount of nutrients you're not going to get in your food that you have to take so you have the nutritional foundation so you won't become addicted. This is just self-defense. Having this amount of vitamin A, 15,000 units, and vitamin D, 400 units, vitamin E, 400 units, vitamin K, 2 milligrams. This is what you need. Multiple vitamin minerals, commonly call it, just as self-defense. So you can have some sort of nutritional foundation to work from. I'm going to skip over a lot of things and just get right to the heart of the matter. But we need these vitamins and minerals to have a nutritional foundation, as has been proven with alcoholics. Once we have a strong nutritional foundation, it's very hard to get a person addicted to any substance. Any substance. I'm just showing you some of these stats of how the drugs have increased amongst the 8th graders in school. The marijuana is up, the crack is up, LSD, this is all over the world because European culture is worldwide. I think you call it the internet. But with that culture comes everything that I'm showing you. It's not a separate issue. It's all part of it. The problem with the drugs is that it is very altering of the mind. They're targeted toward the black intelligence, towards the melanin which drives our state of being. And they no longer have to use knives and surgery to get to our brains. They chemically addict you and destroy your brain and alter your thought process. These are the scientists that help affect that. Now, we're in a drug-orientated culture. Let me just show you how this thing goes, step by step, so you can see what happens here. Now, we're looking at from age, let's say from age 0 to 4, we're looking at vaccinations, which are medical. You're looking at a child becoming a sugar addict. 0 to 4, this is how we come in here. You can't escape it in this culture. They become a milk hormone addict. The hormones in milk, which cause the girls to get breast early, the boys to get this pubic hair, and it causes what we call the pineal gland to shrink from these sex hormones. So they become a milk hormone addict. Then the penicillin in itself is a drug. Then they become addicted to salt. And then they develop an eating disorder, which means they're eating all the time. A chewing gum, a soda, a candy bar, cookies. They develop into eating disorder. So we have already started the addiction. The child is just searching for what chemical they are addicted to. That drug of choice, but they are already addicted. Now, that's from 0 to 4. Then we get into 4 to 12. Now we're going to start giving the child Ritalin, baby Tylenol, you've seen it, aspirin, and of course they use an inhalants. The spray that you use for spray paint, inhaling the spray from deodorant. They're using all inhalants now. All of them, I can't name all of them, but they use all of them. The ones you're not even thinking of, keep children from getting high off. They're drugged for being advanced in growth. That's what happens with that black children, because their growth and development schedule is way ahead of white children. Their behavior, they're responding to information too quickly. And it seems like they're frigidity, but actually there's not enough information coming to them. And they're reacting, trying to create something. And so they're drugged because they're actually black. Now when a child gets around 12 to 18, then the girls start going on this birth control pill, which causes cancer, as we know. So now they're addicted to birth control pill and diet pills. But if they're white, 60% of their melanin is inactive. So their brains don't respond as well. So they need something to help drive them so they can feel life. Then when we get to around 18 to 24, this is amphetamines, which is speed, and alcohol, and marijuana. And if they're white, their melanin is 80% inactive. So it becomes rather hard to communicate with the crackers. So we have this kind of drugs. All of these drugs are compounded. They haven't stopped one of them. They're just adding as we go along. Then we're getting into the 24 to 30. That's when we start getting into the Prozac and the Motrin, which is used for arthritis originally. Now I think you use it for headaches. Motrin. This is added on to the alcohol, the marijuana, the speed, the birth control pills, the inhalants. All this is just accumulated. The Ritalin, the aspirin, all this is just accumulated. So we get to 38 to 65. Then we have the Zantac, the Procardia, high blood pressure medicine, the insulin, because now they're, from all of that sugar addiction, now their pancreas isn't working, right? It's shut down on them, so now they're taking insulin, which leads to blindness. Now they're taking epinephrine, which is a speed, and they're taking nitroglycerin for their heart, and sleeping pills, because they're so drugged they can't go to sleep at night, so now they're taking the sleeping pills and prednisone. This is added on to everything else. Then since once you get past 65 or 70, that's when the blacks outlive the whites, so most of the elderly are becoming black. Then you're getting all the drugs. Plus the system is so retarded from the drugs slowing down the action of the digestive system. Now we're addicted to laxatives. A lot of young people are addicted to laxatives. See the commercials with young people talking about laxatives. Now they're addicted to radiation therapy, which started when you start listening to radios and being around computers. Now you have radiation addiction, which is also addiction. Then you're going into Haldol because you're probably thinking about being free, which is rather crazy in itself, so they're going to medicate you for that. That's added on to all of that, but that's what goes on in European cultures. And when you're in European culture, you're going to go along the addiction trail. It's already set up that way, and these drugs are considered normal. It is normal for someone to be lugging around some Tylenol. And they pull it out on you. You say, I think I got a headache. They pull out all this stuff on you. You just say, I think I have one. I didn't say I have one. They're just pulling out all this stuff. Try this, try Anvil, hammer, something. But the process being that because of the melanin bonds drugs to us at a higher rate, and we can't release the addiction as easy as white folks can, because I showed you how they're losing the melanin as they get older, so they can bond the drugs, chemicals to their body that black people do. So the addiction is very strong in us. So we are more addicted to codeine, morphine, caffeine, nicotine than any other race. The melanin is attempting to get rid of it, but since we haven't changed our diet, it can't get rid of it. When you get rid of the melanin or drug it, you change the rhythmicity of the system. And that's when you get into the holistic effect of being addicted to drugs. Anytime. This is a holistic chart I had to show the relationship between letters and numbers and colors. And this is how they package Tylenol. They pick certain letters and certain colors. If you look at the drugs or look at the food, you see that they name them with these letters here. They use these specific letters to name their product. They'll be in the name of it. And they use these specific numbers and the notes. That's the musical note will be in the jingle. And the color. This is the African name of that. And it's aimed at certain glands. They use a lot of orange. They use a lot of letter B, K, and T, as you know, with Tylenol and things, because that's stimulating to sex glands. They're not just naming these things. They're going accidentally like you think, and they have Ritalin, which has the R, the I, and the T in it, which is retarding the sexual development of the child. Ritalin. And they color the drugs with these colors because of the stimulating effect as well as the food products. They know these charts better than we do, and this is an African chart from an African science. As you can see when I have this Egyptian person here showing you the chakras right here. These are melanin cluster centers in the body, which are related to these centers right up here. Melanin clusters on the holistic part of the chart right here. Third eye, crown, throat. Here they are. Identified 4,000 years ago in paintings. And then we have the zodiacal kind of breakdown of the body. And they use these notes and these colors. And all this has a holistic effect upon our system. We become spiritually addicted, mentally addicted, and physically addicted. Europeans are just running on a physical addiction. So this thing hits us very hard. Very hard. It seems as though we should be waking up to some of this process because we can see from our age span, going back to the 18th century, going back to the early census reports, how we were outliving these white folks. we were hitting around 130 years of age. We had a lot of people in 18th century over 100. I have the statistics in the Nutricide. But now we're looking at 80 as normal. If you live that long, you know, that's considered living a long time. But if we're looking at the white lifespan down here and the black lifespan and how it has been decreased. Here we have menopause, which as you can see is starting around 45, which used to start around going toward 80. Menopause is another big market. Ladies are really being had because they're the biggest market, so they make menopause into a disease to sell more drugs.
That's right.
Now, you know that menopause and menstruation is only done with female ladies. It's not done with any insects, birds. There's only one animal that goes into menopause, and that's the pilot whale. And that animal, when they go to menopause, they're around, they die at 60 and they go into menopause when they're 50. And if you equate that to human lifespan, that means a black lady that lives to be 80 goes into menopause when she's 75. And that's the only animal they know of that goes into menopause, the pilot whale. Because menopause is not even normal, even among African people. It's a European kind of disease anyway. But nonetheless, they medicate people, give them a lot of estrogen, synthetic estrogen, which causes cancer, but people are already addicted to the synthetic hormones because that's in the beef and that's in the chicken. So it's not that much of a big shift there. The boys into estrogen hormones and the beef and chicken, and maybe that's why we get a lot of Dennis Rod's, Rod the Man, those kind of people. But nonetheless, we have the glandular system, as I showed you before, starts deteriorating and reacting to these kind of drugs. Now, mind you, the body's trying to react, and when the body reacts to the drugs, or the violence, or to the sex, these glands trigger off. If you stimulate the sexual glands, it's going to stimulate the adrenal glands. It's going to stimulate the pancreas. All these are going to shut down. The adrenals, the pancreas, the thymus is going to get active. The pineal gland is going to get active. The pituitary is going to get active. So you can't stimulate one gland without having an effect on the others. This is what causes a lot of sexual problems amongst black men who are becoming very impotent. They're becoming very erectly impotent, but there's not enough to become impotent. Now, the drugs go into the water system, and it changes the water balance. The water is used to a certain amount of iron, copper, zinc, salt, that sort of thing. When you put the synthetic drugs in, which are mostly sodium salts anyway, it changes the water balance. Now you're getting reverse osmosis, so the drugs are pulling the water out of the muscles, pulling the water out of the kidney, out of the ribs, out of the brain, and it starts altering the water flow in your system. I have a man here because men have more water than women. Women have more fat or earth than men. Men react more to the moon, that's what I'm trying to say. Women react more to the sun. That's why the aboriginals have the sun as female and the moon as male. That is another subject. Now we have anxiety epidemic. We want everybody to be uptight and out of sight. You understand? If we can get you uptight, then we can cause you to be medicated for something. You're not supposed to have a human reaction. Anytime you have a reaction to like being insulted or not having your way, going to school and not being educated, when you start reacting humanly, you start having what we call an anxiety epidemic. So you feel low and depressed, and so in order to get rid of this depressed feeling, you medicate yourself with a candy bar. Or you drink coffee. You're medicating yourself for the condition that you're in. You're either trying to get under it, like in the 50s people got under the condition, we call that being cool, because you're down low. Or you use a drug to help carry you through the condition, and the drug, like your mother, will put you on the hip. And so you're being carried through the condition so that you're being hit. Either way, you're trying to get past this condition. So the person takes the candy bar, and then they get a little glucose rush in 15 to 20 minutes. Then they have what they call a false high, right here, which actually is the body rushing the defenses to the sugar to get rid of the sugar. You feel the defensive reaction, which is an adrenaline response, trying to get rid of the sugar. Then the body is trying to burn up this waste in the system, and it makes a waste byproduct called lactic acid, which makes your muscles tired and weak. So you have a physical response to that, which is anxiety and fear, because that's what happens when your body starts squirting out this adrenaline. You have to either attack. If you don't attack, you're going to get into anxiety and fear, and you're going to shake and get hyper. And all this adrenaline is going to get absorbed in your heart, which causes your heart to weaken, and makes you more susceptible to heart attacks, or high blood pressure, as they call it. That's just an adrenaline response based on being stressed. Anxiety. So they have an anxiety attack. They have a glucose buildup, they have adrenaline release in the bloodstream, which is that false sensation you get, your body reacting to the white sugar. You have the waste buildup again, and then the fear, panic, loss of control, and the cycles begins. Because it's altering your cycles. What we have in African people are diseases of rhythmicity, diseases of cycles. We're going to throw the cycles out of balance. So this is what people are trying to medicate themselves for with the sugar, with the coffee, and those kind of things that are classified technically as drugs. But let's not forget that everyone is making sugar very appealing. It looks very nice to be slurping on things and licking on this and sucking on that. But actually it's very sick to see these people with their tongue hanging out their mouth all the time, getting dry, just waiting to slip something across there, and this little fat boy here with his hands stuck in his potato chip bag. I mean, this is a very sick scene, but we think it is, you know, fun. I have to get past this. This is very looking like. This is sugar. I thought I'd just put that up here, because we all know what it is. It's white, and therefore it's no good for us. We all know what it is. It's the sugar demon. Now the sugar damages the melanin centers in the pancreas, which we call the Owls of Langerhans. And it damages the melanin, and therefore it causes addiction. It causes constipation, which causes headache. Then you're holding waste in your system, and the waste irritates your nerves and your muscles, and the child gets irritable and not getting enough oxygen to the brain, because the sugar robs the brain of oxygen. Now the person's getting neurotic, or acting crazy, as we would say. Now they're going to start holding all this acid, and the acid's going to start wearing away and eating their teeth, and the teeth are going to rot, and it's also going to deteriorate the kidneys and the eyes, and eventually they'll just go blind. But let's not go harp on that sort of thing. Let's look at something more pleasant. You've seen this before, all these sugar things here. The sugar in the processing of oil, that's why people are addicted to oil. They absolutely have to have fried fish and fried chicken because they're addicted to oil. Because they put sugar in the oil when they process it. They put sugar in the Spam, they put sugar in the carnaceous milk. Of course, the flour itself is nothing but fast-acting sugar, because it's glucose, refined carbohydrates, gets turned right into alcohol. So basically all these things are something you get high off of. They're addicting. What I'm trying to say is no soy salt, no salt, no sugar, no cider vinegar, that's acidic acid, no milk, no cheese, no artificial colors, which are drugs, no sodas. Chocolate has 3 drugs in it. Colored butter has over 45. Antacid stops the digestive process, which keeps the poisons in your body. Processed meat is filled with nitrate, which is a chemical that's addicting. Mustard has over 100 chemicals in it. I'm not going to mention all of them, but they are addicting. Pork itself, well, the animal doesn't look pleasant in the first place. Pickles have acidic acid in it. Preservatives basically preserve your brain, a form of stupidity. These are chemicals that are waste byproducts. The objective is to get you used to taking waste. No one wants to eat a potato. People want to eat potato chips. No one wants to eat corn anymore. They want to eat corn chips. We are not attached to nature. They cannot make money if you buy the grapes. They can only buy the money if you wait till they let the grapes rot and it turns into wine. The objective is not to get you back to nature, because that gets you back to your strength. You're addicted to the waste byproducts. Vinegar is a waste byproduct of starch. Alcohol is a waste byproduct of starch. We're addicted to the waste. Well, everyone is looking. But what happens with the addiction is we can alter the thought process, and the food is not going to contain any of these nutrients you need, which I showed you on the chart with the vitamin E, the vitamin D, the vitamin K, the choline, the inositol, the thiamine, all those kind of nutrients you get in whole foods. What we're going to do is take them out of the food that you eat, and that alters your mind, which these foods act to help transmit nervous messages from one cell to another, message from one organ to another, message from one side of your brain to another, and we call those neurotransmitters, nerve transmission. We'll always change these terms here. But without these nutrients, your brain can't communicate with itself or with you. So you're cutting off the connection between your brain and your body. The food itself does that. Was that too fast? I see someone writing. Why do people write? They're videotaping it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so now, everyone says, I'm not addicted to anything. I'm not addicted to sex. I'm going to go over that. I'm not addicted to sugar. I'm not addicted to salt. I'm not addicted to anything. I'm not addicted to violence. I'm not addicted to anything. Okay, sure. You know in yourself that you have an addiction. You know you have addiction. You're either codependent, or you have some addiction, or you have a related disorder. That, in other words, I've changed your belief structure. I've changed your thought process, your feelings. I've altered everything, your decision process, because now you make decisions based on around what you're going to eat, what time dinner is. Then you decide what you're going to do next, because your decisions are based around your addiction. Your choices are changed, your experiences change because your experience alters. A person who's addicted to marijuana has a completely different life experience than a person addicted to cocaine. See, your experiences in life are altered. Your wants and needs are altered. Your sensations are altered. How you feel and what you feel and when you feel, it's all altered. Now, we look at the person that's addicted, and we say we got to get rid of this addiction, person addicted to abuse, or addicted to sex or violence or food, and we look at that person. But the person that's really catching the harm for the addiction is the codependent person. The codependent addiction is the worst addiction, because now you're buying into the whole operation. You're buying into the addiction and supporting it. We're just used to being codependent. As African people, we are codependent. That's what happens when, as I mentioned before, when you colonize. You cannot see anything without your master. I mean, if you want to succeed, you get the master's degree. You want to get a reward from your master, a Grammy, an Emmy, an Oscar. You always want something from your master, because you're dependent on your master to define reality for you. And you're dependent on this drug or food to define reality for you. So you're codependent, and you will keep the person alcoholic. That is alcoholic if you're in a codependent relationship, because your reality is based on their addiction. Your happiness, even if the person was not in the home, even if you grow up and leave and your father was alcoholic, you're going to say, I'm going to do good in life because I want to show my father if I'm good, that may make him stop being alcoholic. So you're living out a script based on alcoholism. You say, well, I don't like what my father did to me, so you get married and torture your husband to punish your father. So you're living out a script based on this addiction. We do that with food. My mother liked apple pie, and she liked pig feet, and all that. I'm trying to break away from it, but every now and then I got to have some apple pie. I know I'm cheating. No, every now and then I have to rebond with my mother. My whole script around eating is based on this codependency, this addiction. But we don't want to admit to that. But the food industry knows that we're hungry, knows that we're on it, and they keep us on it. Look here.
I think that's the last part of that.
The last one?
The last segment over.
Let me see. Okay. Yeah. The unconscious experience is what I was talking about, how you just reborn and don't know that that's what you're doing. See, you always go shopping when you're upset because your mother went shopping. Some people start washing clothes. They wash the whole damn house when they're upset because their mother be washing clothes at that man, you know, and she'd be fussing and beating them up on the scrubboard, you know. So you start cleaning and beating up, just living out a script here. But we have this same thing that occurs with the food. People start eating. I used to watch people doing at the movies with the eating addictions. When the sex scene come on, I start watching. They start eating more food because the sex is connected with food. It's shaped like sex organs. And people, when you go to the movies and you see the sex scene come on, that's when they really start shoveling that food in their mouth. It's really weird, you know. But it's a kind of like a gratifying experience, I guess. But I look at it sometimes. It's really sickening. But nonetheless, you have this compulsive overeating kind of thing that people do. They eat real good for a while, and then they go binge. You know, one weekend they just binge and eat everything, moving or walking. I mean, they're eating everything. But they know they're doing bad. And then the next week they go and, you know, they say, well, I'm going to do good. I'm going to stop doing this. And I'm going to eat a couple sprouts Tuesday, you know, that kind of thing. And stop at Dunkin' Doo-Doo and really eat some because we have this obsession with food here in America. Domino comes at us all the time. I mean, this is something that our country, the Europeans, just program us to be. And we don't see people as having an eating disorder when they're always pulling out a candy bar and they're looking in their purse for something, and the next person pull out something and give it to them, and before they find it. They're swapping off their addiction. They're like drug addicts, you know. I watched them all together, switching candy bars, handing each other chewing gum, and swapping sodas, and all kind of slurping, sugar dripping all over the place. But they have this obsession with food, because food is the one thing that we can exert power over. For once we can feel powerful. Because we don't have any power at work. We don't have any power with the school system. We don't have no power in economic, but we have power over the food. We can go to the store and be a slave master. I'm going to buy this one. I'm going to buy Uncle and your mama. Okay, now I'm going to buy Uncle Ben. I mean, we're really going into slavery in the store, you know, and they know that. That's why they have you buying these characters. Yes, Snack, Crackle, and Pop. You know, that's how black people get into slavery. They go buy 3 white people, you know. A whole psychological thing that goes with this. And they know it. Here we go. Now, I've said a lot of bad things in the past about sugar. But salt is very addictive. It alters sodium-potassium balance in your system, alters the rhythm of your heart rate. You see, it's going to cause you to retain waste. Salt holds the water. Your body's trying to get rid of waste, which is urine and bowel movement, water, and you take the salt and your body holds the waste in. And from the waste in your system, it irritates your system, what we call stimulating your system, like cocaine or alcohol, which is a waste. And so your body feels stimulation from the waste. So actually you're getting a false high from the salt. And people really don't know how much salt they're eating anyway. They just start salting their food before they even eat it. I mean, they'll be on their plate and they start dumping salt. Never even taste the food. And you know that's an addicted person that's going to salt something like that. Haven't even tasted it, dumping it. But it's very addictive. People crave salt. It gives you like a roller coaster effect because it kind of like lifts you up for a minute, then it drops you down. That's why they put salt in everything. You go buy a candy bar and you see ingredient salt. You say, why they put salt in it when it's supposed to be sweet? Because they know that once you drop down off of that sugar addiction, the salt's going to buzz you up a little bit, and then it's going to make you crave the sugar even more to get rid of the salt taste. And then if you want the sweets to taste sweeter, you have to eat salt. It's sort of like someone on cocaine. If they want to get a real buzz from the cocaine, they got to take morphine. Very addictive. Causes high blood pressure. To make matters worse than worse, they put salt and sugar in malt liquor. They are not kidding. It's bad enough as it is. As bad enough as it is, they have the nerve to put white sugar in it. They have wood alcohol in here, petroleum alcohol, and starch alcohol. They have 3 different alcohols in malt liquor. You thought it was just the malt. No, they're using wood alcohol, which causes blindness and causes you to go insane, schizophrenia, because alcohol kills the brain cells. It fries them. It loses them. It just burns up your brain. So we have all these different alcohols, and all of them are toxic to the liver, the kidney, destroy brain cells. The isobutanol is natural gas. That's the stuff you burn, cook with. That's natural gas alcohol. They have all these alcohols in there. It damages the liver, the kidney, the skin, the brain, the sex organs, and then they put white sugar in there to make it double addictive. This is a poison. If you take singularly any of these substances all day, you will be in a mental institution. Of course, if you're around other addicts, they won't notice you're crazy anyways. We all know what lead does. I don't have to go over lead poisoning. Why would they put it in the beer? Why? Because it's an irritant. And when the body comes to get rid of the irritant, it stimulates the system. Therefore, it's addicting. Aside from retarding the digestion. Now, let me get to some treatments. As I mentioned before, is just replacing the nutrients that the addictive substance is taken out of the system. I'm back to the vitamins and minerals, the phenylalanine, the glutamine, which helps your memory and helps stimulate certain hormones in your system. I'm back to gamma-aminobenzoic acid, GABA, which helps you control your behavior. I'm back to vitamin D3. I'm back to vitamin C, vitamin E. All of these are burnt up by alcohol or any drug. They just take them out of your system completely. So you have to replace all of these nutrients in order to get rid of the addiction. For each addiction. If it's addiction to eating or cocaine, I'm still going to go back and replace all of these substances so you have something to defend yourself with, so your brain can function and better, so you can think better, so you can reorder your thinking. I'm going to go back with the phenylalanine, which is an amino acid, the tyrosine, the glutamine, which is for memory, the carnitine, which is for the heart, the magnesium, because that's the first mineral you lose when you take a drug. The magnesium is going to go. Then if you're a lady, the magnesium is going to go second. Then you have the zinc and the chromium. Same nutrients you use for cocaine addiction. There's no change. Now let me get a little more technical with this business here. What we call addictions, technically, is reward deficiency syndrome. You lack rewards for being human, for being yourself. You have what we call a reward deficiency syndrome. On a biological level, it's an alteration of the A1 allele of the D2 dopamine receptor site of your nervous system on a biological level. You want to get into the chemistry. That's what has changed. Now, the types of syndromes, of reward deficiency syndromes, are addictive behavior, which you call alcoholism, or eating disorder. These are just some of them. I'm not listing all of them. Then you have compulsive behavior, which we call gambling, or sex addiction, or slavery addiction. Some of us only feel good when we're around white people, or working for white people. Really. When we can go grin with them, we feel like we're valuable. So that's a compulsive behavior. That comes under reward deficiency. We lack enough inner self to make ourselves feel good. We have to look outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel good. Then we have the impulse behavior, which is autism, where a person just withdraws inside of themselves. Then you have the liars. They have what we call impulse behavior. People, you know they're lying, and they know they're lying, And they twist their mouth so they can, a lie can come out of it and make it sound like the truth. But they lie. And some of them are really good at it, too. And I believe a lot of them, too. Some of them tell a lie so damn good, I go for it. I say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll buy a Brooklyn Bridge. But nonetheless, we have impulse behavior. People that just shop all the time. There are people that even shop around for their own funeral. They read the obituary column. You know, and they, oh, I wouldn't mind. That must have been a beautiful funeral. Wish I was there. In the casket or visiting. Which way you... But they be into this whole thing. Shopping. They shop clothes, or they must do something just completely crazy every now and then. Would you say they go off? They got to go off once a week. You know they're going to go off. And you just try to look in their eyes with that little crazy twinge in their eyes and know when they get away. But they have impulse behavior. Or they can have a personality disorder, which you know white racism is one, and violence is one. And homosexuality, which is also addiction. You contract it the same way. You're at risk. If one of your friends or somebody in your class is gay, you're at risk. But if someone in your family is homosexual, then you're adding a disadvantage to the risk. Now you're able to contract the disease. You contract homosexuality just like you contract any other disease. You go to church. If there's too many of them there, well, praise God. But we're subjecting ourselves to risk. There's no need of going to the bar if you don't drink. What's the sense? After a while, sooner or later, you're going to either adjust your behavior to that lifestyle. Even if you don't drink, you start talking like a drunk. And even if you're not gay, you start talking like them. Girlfriend, or whatever they say, or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm saying the whole thought process. You can be addicted to the thought process of the addiction and hang around people who are addicted so you can live in that world without the drug. You're just as bad off as they are because you help them support their addiction. So all of these are part of what we call the reward deficiency syndrome. Addictive behavior, compulsive behavior, impulsive behavior, and personality disorders. I have down the bottom, white domination creates social conditions that cause reward deficiency syndrome. Then blames the blacks for the condition. That's what addicts do. Let's go back. The Geneva Convention says genocide is when you create the conditions that cause the destruction of a race.
That's right.
Or when you hand over your race to another race, what you call adoption, or something like that, or school system. You handing over your race to be raised by another race. That's known as genocide, according to white people. And that's what is happening. We have the social conditions that create an addiction, create a need for a reward. You want to be rewarded for being black because you're not going to get any reward from other black people. You know that. More than likely, they're going to put you down for just trying. So you're not getting rewards from your peers, as we call it. You try changing your diet and see how you get rewarded. You try getting it out of the Christian religion and see how you get rewarded. You start wearing African clothes, see how you get rewarded by other African people. You're not getting any reward for being black, so we're seeking for a reward. From Jesse Jackson or whoever. But this is a disease syndrome. But you know, when you try to get off of these addictions, you're going to always relapse, because relapse is part of the addictive complex. That is part of it. You're introduced to the substance or the behavior that's addictive. You don't know anything about it, but you're introduced to it. Usually by your friend or someone like that. Then you're reintroduced to it. Then you start asking for whatever it is. Then you become psychologically attached to it. Then you become socially attached, physically attached to it. That's what we call an addicted person. Let me go back and put a chemical in there so you know what I'm talking about. You never smoked a cigarette. Someone comes up to you, someone you know, and introduces you to a cigarette. Say, here, why don't you try one of those? And you try and start coughing. They say, well, try it again, and this way, and they start showing you how to handle this substance. So they reintroduce you to the substance. Try another one, but this time, just drawing it slower. Okay? Now, so you're introduced, you're reintroduced. Now the third time, you say, well, let's go out and have some fun. Yeah, do you have any cigarettes? See, now you're associating fun with smoking. Now, they come by and say, well, let's go out. You buy a pack of cigarettes, they buy a pack of cigarettes. Because you now have a social addiction to that substance. But after a while, that chemical gets in your system and you have a chemical addiction for that substance. You start looking around for butts in the ashtray. You know, I threw out one, you run out of cigarettes, then you go look in the trash can for a butt. At that point, you know you are physically hooked on that substance. That's when you, what we call the addict. And the same thing happens with alcohol. Someone introduced you to it. You say, don't smell right, and you drink it, and you cough, it burns. They say, well, try it again, but this time put a little lemon in it. You know, so you drink it again. They reintroduce you to it, and you say, let's go out and have some fun. Let's get some liquor. So you associate a good time with the alcohol. Then every time you want to go out, you always have liquor. Then you're socially addicted to it. And then after a while, you become physically addicted to it, where you have a little shorty in your purse, you know, where you gotta have this thing, you know, I gotta have a wake-up call, so you take a little nip. That's what you're physically addicted to it. And that's what we call an addict. And that goes for all addictions. Even if I want to addict you to church or the synagogue or whatever the religion is, I take you to it, introduce you to it, and you say, I don't understand how it goes. Why don't you read this Bible, be it the Quran or the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, or whatever the Bible is. I say, why don't you read a little bit of it? I'm reintroducing you to it. Then you say, well, let's go to church. It's all right. You got the Bible? See? And that's the third place. Now you associate being spiritual with the church, with religion. So now you start going with the person. And then the person don't even have to go with you. Now you're socially dependent upon the meetings, the church group, or whatever it is, for your lifestyle. Then you just chemically addicted to it after a while. I mean, after a while it becomes a chemical as well as a sexual addiction. People, black folks go through a lot of sexual things at church. I mean, when they say, Lord, do it to me, I kind of... Well, let's not get into it. What I'm trying to say is, everything can be addictive.
Right.
So, with all addictions, you have relapse. You're trying to get off of it, but you have these relapses. We don't see, there's certain triggers that occur to let you know when a person's getting ready to have a relapse. It's like if you marry for a certain period of time, the wife or the husband will start walking around and say, I know he's getting ready to go out. See, because his attitude changes. So you get certain triggers, his mood changes. Yeah, then his behavior changes. He start getting picky about his clothes. You know, he's been wearing the same socks for a week, all of a sudden he's wearing socks, right? Behavior changes. So you know he's going into relapse. All addiction carries relapses, but you don't blame the relapse on yourself. People do not say, I am pneumonia. They do not say, I am TB. They do not say, I am a cold. You say, I have a cold. I have pneumonia. I have TB. When you have addiction, you have relapse with it. But they internalize this thing and make it seem like it's them. But that goes with the addiction, relapsing. That's the cycle of the chemicals. Just like you have a cycle for the waves, a cycle for the moon, full moon, waxing moon, everything has a cycle. You have thought cycles, you have all these different cycles. You know, you're going into one of them saving things, when you're on a saving thing, where you're just saving everything, then you're spending. You have a saving and spending cycle. Everything has a cycle, and these chemicals have a cycle, and sometimes they say, you got to feed me now. You got to go out and do something. And then you go on a low swing, that's a relapse. It has a cycle. Now, let me get clear on these addictions so you see what I'm talking about. Let's go step by step. Addictions. It's built into the predatory nature of being in European society. It's built in it. Because this society has what we call a pyramid structure. The people at the very top are wealthy. And you don't know their name, and you never see them, and you never know what they're up to. You can call them Illuminati, the Treasury Department, doesn't matter. The people on top of the pyramid know everything. The people down the bottom don't know nothing. They just go to work. Well, I work over there. They don't know what's going on, who's putting all this stuff together.
Yes, sir.
The people in control of whatever it is are the furthest away from the operation.
That's right.
The principal is the furthest away from the classroom. Whoever's in control is the furthest away. It's the pyramid structure of the military of all the European kind of society. So in this structure, you have poverty, rape, and crime, violence, self-hatred. Everyone knows that you hate yourself when you take drugs. When you're into alcoholism, in some way you just hate yourself. You hate yourself for not being what you think you should be and not having the tools to be what you want to be. And you just generally just hate yourself. And usually it's a dysfunctional family. And homosexuality. All this is built into European society. It came with it. But since you entered the society, you think you created this stuff. But it comes with them. And dysfunctional family comes with it. Addiction comes with it. Violence comes with it. All of this comes with the social structure that we are in. Unfortunately, we try to medicate ourselves from it and say, oh, well, this is my fault. You don't even own any of the controls of the structure, but you take it like you own it. That's part of it. It's a symptom of being dominated. It's a symptom of white supremacy, domination, whatever you want to call it. This is a symptom of it. It happens to anyone that comes under their control. The American Indians, poverty, crime, rape, alcoholism, dysfunctional. Anyone that comes in contact with the social order, this is what happens. They create social conditions that create drugs, and suicides is what I call it. People know they're killing themselves with alcohol. People know they're killing themselves with cocaine. People know they're killing themselves with sex addiction. I'm going to go over sex addiction in a second. So a lot of people don't think that's addictive. They're associated with oppression, slavery, trauma, cultural stress. It's part of African codependency upon European domination. I mean, that's how we define ourselves. If you don't have a white job, you don't have a job. You know that.
Yeah.
You don't want to own a car factory, you want to own a car. That's how dependent people think. I want to buy a ring. Why don't you want to own the factory that makes the ring? We think codependently. The treatment, in order to treat a person who's addicted, you first, we do call it psychosocial. You must bond the person to an African culture, because that helps define yourself. You define yourself by your culture. Your culture helps you to solve your problems. The culture helps you define reality, define yourself, and solve problems. That's what a culture does. You cannot listen without a culture. You cannot see without a culture. You cannot touch without a culture. Your culture allows you to be in contact with reality. When you see, you don't see with your eyes, you see with your brain. That's why a Japanese person that sees an accident will say different from an African person that sees the accident, because we interpret reality based on our culture. It's like a Chinese person that hear blues and won't like it, because they're taught from their culture what sound good. If Ray Charles sings the same song that Tom Jones or, God forbid, Frank Sinatra sings, it's going to sound different, because our culture interprets sound for us. But we don't see that as culture because the Europeans teach us there's no such thing as culture. If there is a culture, it's theirs. So we have to help the person bond to their culture so they can define themselves, define reality, and have solutions to their problems. That's what a culture does. If it doesn't solve your problems, it is not a culture. It must have the basic needs of spirituality. The African person has to. Spirituality, family, shelter, food, health, job, or self-employment. All these needs have to be met if you're going to treat an African person. I'm talking about treating them as an African person. If you want to treat them as a Negro, then you don't need all this stuff. You must provide personality adjustment, not personality change. You cannot count for a black person to change their personality. What was wrong with it in the first place? Whatever was wrong with it is associated with white people. We just don't see this whole thing as a cultural thing. This is a cultural stressor, as we call it. Being addicted is a symptom of being under cultural stress. Now, when you're talking to black people in a counseling situation, don't get up in the don't get up in the face, because we don't like that kind of distance. Some of the Arabs do that when I'm over in the Middle East. They won't be all in your face because they can only check whether you're telling the truth by your eyes. If you're telling the truth, the pupil is wider. When you lie, and it gets smaller. So they got to be right up on you when they're talking to you. And both of their pupils are small. They're both lying to each other, but they just check it out. But you have to be arm distance when you counsel. That's the space we have to have to maintain a kind of communal atmosphere. That defines property. You can't have anything in nature without property. That's the way nature works. If a fish wants to mate with another fish, that fish must first have property. They stake out an area in the water that they own and control. If a lion wants to have mates, he has to have property. You can't have anything in nature, not even a bee, without property. That's how life is defined. That's how nations are built. You have to have land and control the land to have a nation. If you don't have land, control the land, and you import raw goods and produce something, then you don't have a nation. You have to have property. That just goes with it. I don't know how to explain that. But when you're looking at reality through another culture, you miss this point. You look at, you see two lions having sex, you say, oh, all they into is sex. But that lion cannot have sex without property. That's how it works. Without the property, and without understanding the culture, you can't have a relationship. Even the bee culture, because they have certain rituals they perform. And in order to perform those rituals, you must have the culture. So the lion must have land and have knowledge and understanding of his culture.
That's right.
The bees, in order for them to have a community, they must have land and knowledge of their culture. That goes on in nature, even with plants. They must first define land. You have a major tree that controls the forest. I know you don't know plant civilization, but this happens even with plants. You've got to have land, you've got to know culture in order to function in a society. That's right. Birds, bees, fish, cats, dogs, rats, all. But the Negro, if he can live on the master's property, he's fine. And I'm just saying, if you want to be an African person, you must first have these things. So you don't want personality change. You want the person to be able to adjust to this situation. And the only way to adjust is to see it through your culture. So the counselor is at arm's length so the black person can feel that they have control of a space, which is land, which is a psychological premise. They have to feel that. Even if a person is overseas, they always talk about some land somewhere. Where is home? They're going to talk about some land because they have to have that to feel that they even have a home. It's a basic. So that you start after detoxification from the drug of behavior. Counseling cannot start as long as a person is drunk. I mean, why are you going to talk to a person when they're drunk? Talk to them about being sober. They don't understand. First, you got to sober the person up, then you can start the counseling. First, you got to get them off the addictive substance. This is physically. Then you can do the counseling. There's no need of counseling someone to get them off of homosexuality and they're still into homosexuality. First, you got to get them away from that substance, or that person, or that electrical device, whatever way it's coming. And then you can talk to them. Now, the steps in the treatment is to bond them to the culture. As I mentioned before, certain rules cultures have, and we call that ma'at, righteousness, just purpose, all that. That's what we call ma'at. And the customs and rituals. But African people don't define their customs and rituals. Now, in European society, you have to follow certain customs. If you don't have a weapon, you show your hand to say, I don't have a weapon. And the other person says, I don't have a weapon either. And he shows his hand, and then you shake hands. Because that means I do not have a weapon. So they follow in their rituals and ceremonies. And to show I'm not going to attack you, I just touch my teeth like this. If I'm getting ready to attack, I do like this. That's why they smile. Europeans are known to smile. But you think they're smiling because it comes out of friendliness. That means I'm not going to attack. So they smile. They shake their hands to show I do not have a weapon. That means I'm not going to attack. They are following the rituals and ceremonies of their culture.
Okay.
So when they shake their hands and smile, then they can talk. Because the people want, I'm not going to attack, I'm not going to eat you, I'm not, whatever that means to them. So we can't follow their rituals and ceremonies. We shouldn't be shaking hands. What the heck for? But nonetheless, we are former slaves, and we got to get rid of these things, ease out of them, I guess. So we go into our foods, and we go into exercise and herbs. We start reaffirming our culture as a part of the treatment. You don't want to put all this on the person. You just gradually get them away from this. Because once you bond them back into European culture, you're going to bond them back into some kind of addiction. Because their culture functions on addiction. They have always been addicted. Now we want to solve the needs and act upon the needs to destroy that kind of dependence they have. You have to set up some kind of mechanism so they can define this is black and that's white. Because everything white is not black. So they say, well, no, that's what black people do, and this is what black people do. So they start doing more or less to start defining their reality that way. They no, white people go crazy, they jump out the window. Black people go crazy, they're just going to slap somebody. You got to define the reality. Say, no, that's not the way we go crazy. If you're going to be crazy in this house, you got to be black crazy. I mean, you got to break it down. Now, when you're addicted, you have done a lot of harm. You have hurt yourself, you got to heal yourself, you've hurt your family, you've hurt your friends, and usually if there's alcohol or drugs involved, there may be some kind of sexual abuse of a child involved. There's a whole lot of pain with being healthy. And sometimes it's easier just to stay sick. Because there's a lot of pain that goes with being healthy. You got to heal your relationship with yourself and with your family. You've probably been lying to them, stealing from them. You've done things that hurt your mother's feelings. I mean, you may not have cursed out, but you may walk down the street and peed on yourself. You were so high. It happens. So all of this is damaging the relationship. So there's a lot of pain that goes with healing yourself, healing your family. And since when you are off the substance, your voice is still the same. That's what throws people. You still have that same sound and voice you had when you were high. You say, oh, I'm not going to do it anymore. You say, that's what you said before. Well, it's not, you still got to use these words, but the words that people don't trust. You've abused the words so much, and it's still coming out of your mouth, So all of this is like the person has to adjust to you being healthy. So the whole relationship is very shaky on each side. It's really kind of dangerous for the person being healthy and dangerous for the family, safer for the person to be back into the addiction. Because everybody has those realities defined. It's easier. But now you're making everyone adjust to you being healthy. And that's upsetting the apple cart. Because a lot of people get power from you being the way you are, especially if you have a brother or sister who doesn't have your talent or what you have, and you all messed up in your life. They're the ones that are the star of the family. And now all of a sudden you're showing up and take the space from them. So they're going to have a little grudge against you, too, and they're going to try to slip you back into your addiction. So you got to look out for all these things. So what we do is develop psycho, social, and historical awareness. You start understanding your ancestors and understanding the past and say, hey, those people went through that, and they went through slavery, and they weren't, you start using their strength. So you make that attachment to people that were stronger than you, and you start identifying the problem for what it is. I really don't like myself. I really hate being black. I really think I should have been born in another family like Tiger Woods. I mean, so you start doing your hair like Tiger Woods and dating Japanese or whatever. Because people start hating and realizing they actually hate themselves. So now you have to face the reality with the person, because the reality is very dangerous for a person who's coming off of addiction. Reality they really don't trust. They never lived in it that long anyway. And they don't trust it. But understand that when you try to break an addiction, say if a 6-year-old child or an 8-year-old child has been sucking their thumb for 3 years, that child has been sucking their thumb all their life. But they can break their habit, and now you've been on drugs or on sex or on violence for 10 years. You haven't been doing it all your life. But children break bad habits they've been doing all their life. If they're 5 years old and they've been sucking their thumb for 4 years, they've been sucking their thumb all their life. And you get all on them and get them, and you got to stop doing that. And you keep staying with them and doing it with love, and they can get away from it.
That's right.
Something they've been doing all their life, compared to something you have been only doing 1/3 of your life. So it can be done. But the treatment is something we are not used to. All of us are under treatment. If you're black, you're under treatment for something. Under treatment for being broke. You're under treatment for something.
Yes, sir.
So I just figure we all under treatment.
Yes, sir.
And you have to design a method to change the negatives and the positives. You have to have a plan. You have to write this stuff down. You have to map out a plan. You have to do a shopping list. If you own a budget, you write down what you're going to buy and what you're not going to buy. You have a plan. You write it down and you follow it. Don't be afraid to write it down. People write down things. When the white boys tell them, they write their name. I want to drive. It's like, you write their name. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to take a test, and I'm going to drive. And you do the same thing to yourself. I'm going to write my name down. I'm going to follow these rules, and I'll pass this test, and I'll be free of my addiction. Do the same thing for yourself. You can do it for master. Do it for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And that way you can judge your steps. You can judge your progress. You say, oh, see, I'm not going too well this week. Maybe I better go to more support groups, more women's group, more men's group. Go here, Doc Ben or something. You know you need some support now. I mean, even if you're not even into your church, you go to the church. I go to them just for the singing myself. If I'm going to pay, I'm going to pay. I'm going to that way. If I can pay for a movie, I can pay for this. And I go in. Give them a tip, too. Do Jesus. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I was talking about the cycles of your feelings and understanding that how feelings have cycles. You have anniversary dates of your mother dying or your divorce or your old boyfriend. And then every now and then a thought will come up and you say, oh, I wonder where that came from. It's the anniversary date of your first breakup with your major boyfriend. Or vice versa. You have these anniversary dates, and these are feelings that just overcome you once a year. From nowhere, so it seems. But they're so hardwired, as we call it. They're in your nervous system, in your brain, that you have anniversary dates of them. Every year, you know, some of the guys remember, this around that time that Michael Jordan missed that shot. I mean, really. I mean, so they get more depressed. I mean, really. But they have anniversary dates of significant events in your life, and every year it shows up. Anniversary date of a real big argument you had. You know, every while you wonder, well, I always go to the park this time of year, and then you really check it out. You went to the park that time of year when you had this big argument. So you're in mourning over it, because you haven't really gotten it out of your system, so you're in mourning. But these are anniversary dates. You have fear, you have avoidance. These are unresolved feelings that leads to phobias. You know, that's when you imagine people are doing something to you. When you have a phobia, that's when you imagine these things. People have a phobic reaction to phobia. They just say, well, my wife's getting ready to go on a period. You know, and the PMS is getting ready to come in here with a Uzi and do me in. I mean, so they have this phobia, unresolved fears about something that's really nothing to be feared about at all. And those phobias are used as excuses to go back into addiction. People set themselves up for failures. They sabotage themselves, emotionally sabotage themselves. They've been doing just fine, but they put themselves in a situation that they know is going to lead back to their addiction. That's when you're sabotaging yourself. You have to look out for these cycles of feelings, of frustrations, of dependency. This is going to be on video. I want to show you some of the mechanized and urbanized, unbalanced kind of things that happen. Is this right here? Now, we have overrested, overfed, overstimulated, overprotected. People try to medicate themselves with exercise. They just go into it because they use that to medicate themselves, to hide from things. Or people just beat up themselves. They did bad, so they go out and overeat. Because they punish themselves. We do all this, as I mentioned before, just to kind of like sabotage ourselves. We beat ourselves up.
people sit down and beat up themselves worse than you ever will. They just sitting down to be all nice, and 5 minutes later you see them say, why you got so depressed? They've been sitting in the chair beating the hell out of themselves for 15 minutes, and they're depressed now over what they've been doing to themselves. You haven't did anything. Then you say one word, how you doing? What you say? What you see? I'm beating up myself. It comes from that whole cycle that we get into. When we suppressing our feelings, we're afraid of our feelings because we have never used them before. Some people are afraid to get in arguments. Arguments are healthy. Old couples know how to argue. That's how they last so long. They know when they're supposed to lose, the day she's supposed to win. They have it all mapped out. You be standing around and wondering what's going on. And they be having some old argument that they've had for 20 years. But they always rebake this argument because this is their safe argument. Then they have arguments that they know they shouldn't go into. They have the unsafe arguments, like you talking to a brother. Now, you can say a lot of things, don't talk about his mother. And there's certain things, you know the arguments, and couples have these degrees of arguments that they use. We use this argument when we're this angry. When I get this angry, we can use this argument. If I get this angry, we don't use that argument. We just go to separate rooms. So they know. So you got to have your safe argument and your unsafe argument. You have to know when to save it. You have to know these things about yourself. And you can't know yourself if you're constantly medicating yourself with drugs or sex or violence. People just hide their feelings. It's like a man that falls in love, and then the love affair is over, then he tries to have sex out of the relationship. So he meets a woman and has sex with her, so he's basically what we call screwing himself out of the relationship. He hasn't gotten over the first lady. So he band-aided himself from one relationship out of another, trying to get himself over the first lady with all these other ladies. It's a band-aid, but he keeps dating the same woman. It's really weird. Now, we have the anticonvulsants. These are substances we use for a person that's going to go into like this nervous flare. So I use taurine or GABA, or GABA. This helps the person control their behavior. They're nutrient ways to control addiction. We have antidepressants, which is tyrosine and phenylalanine. We have things for heart failure, because people's hearts start palpitating and everything. They call that falling in love sometimes. So palpitating is when you're not getting enough air or potassium to your heart. We try to control these things by bringing more oxygen in the heart with what we call coenzyme Q10 and carnitine, which is used to break down fat as well, and taurine, which helps the pulsation of the heart. So we have nutrients that help a person ease through these kind of incidents of addiction. Let me move on, because there's really a lot of material here. I want to show you a chart of how the withdrawal crisis works. This is a withdrawal crisis. This can really trigger you back into the addiction. Craving addictor. Every now and then, if you were on alcohol, you would have what we call a dry drunk. If you were on cocaine, you would have a false high. You would just feel the sensation. You just feel like you're drunk, but you're not drunk. Sometimes you just feel like you're upset, but you ain't upset. You're really not. You say, I'm not upset at all. Why did I do that? Why did I snap at her? I mean, I was not angry at all. This is when you have these emotional cravings. You crave the argument. It's not that you feel like arguing. Some people in the morning, if they don't cuss somebody out, they're going to have a bad day. I mean, they just keep doing that just to get their day started, and it gives them the energy. Now, that's when they have the emotional cravings, which triggers them back into the addiction, so you have to be mindful of that. And when you're coming off of your addiction, be it violence, sex, or whatever, you're going to get depressed, because you're losing a good friend. You're losing something that you've been comfortable with. You know all the ins and outs of this thing. So you have to go through a grieving response of losing your addiction. And that causes sleeping problems, because it's disrupting your whole pattern there. Then a lot of people just get in denial of the addiction altogether. I'm not having any problems with this. I can handle this. It's no big deal. I can handle this. That's denial. Flat out denial. Then we have stresses that may trigger you back into the addiction. Death can do that. Some person be doing fine and drinking 20 years and their mother died, such a big crisis.
That's right.
You have to be aware of these stresses. Money can cause that. You may be doing just fine in your relationship, and one person loses their job or something like that, and it's too much of a stress. Because the compatibility wasn't done. It wasn't a compatibility check. Just because you were like, if you're in a relationship and you have all these things in common, that doesn't mean you're compatible. You got to check your compatibility first, and then whether you can do this relationship second. Because a lot of people get along with people that mean them no good whatsoever. They're quite compatible with them, but will it work as a relationship? No. You got to check both sides of it. Divorce is a stressor, being out of work is a stressor, and racism is a stressor, all together. This causes a person to be anxious or cause what we call anxiety. Then people, after they're doing well, they fear that they won't really get better. They feel, well, I'm doing well, but I don't think I'm going to make it. You know? They really start doubting themselves because that's part of the addiction. They say, I've been doing quite well for a month here. I don't know if I'm going to make it. They don't trust themselves. They lie to themselves so much that they lie back to themselves. And they get crossed up in their own lies. Because it's easy for them to believe the lie. They say, I don't think I'm going to make it, you know. Maybe I ought to smoke a cigarette just to show myself I don't want a cigarette. Yeah, that's what I should do. You know, I'll just drink a cup of coffee. Yeah, just to show myself I'm strong enough to handle this. Already they're not strong enough to handle it, but they're into this whole thing, the fear that they won't get better. Then they get angry with themselves. And they beat themselves up. Now they have two choices here. They can analyze the addictive substance and say, well, you know, I drink because it just tastes good. Or I just have sex because it just feels good. Or they can analyze the addictor itself, codependency and death. So people just, you've seen it happen before, I'm quite sure. You just haven't probably verbalized it to yourself. The problem is people analyze the addiction and say the addiction is good and I can control it. Or you can analyze it and say, look, I'm really not getting anything out of this sex thing. Maybe I better put sex addiction up here, because a lot of people are just looking at me like there's no such thing. Let me get this straight. Because a lot of people just don't have sex anyway. I mean, look at here. This is sex addiction. Let me get this one straight. Because a lot of black people do this one. Because this is where they have control and power. There's somebody, you know. Sex addiction is when you constantly are thinking about sex stimulation or fantasy. When you're constantly thinking about it. You know, when you're constantly thinking about it. You know, what am I saying? Am I using the right words here? When you're constantly looking at each other's behinds. I mean, you go down the street, you don't even see the sidewalk. You go from one behind to another behind to another behind. You're constantly looking at people's behinds. You're constantly looking at the sex magazines, the Essence, and the Playboy and whatever they are called. You're constantly fantasizing about sex. If I could just sleep with Whitney Houston, or for those who are into that, or Dennis Rodman, you know, Whoopi Goldberg, or whatever the mind says. You know, I'm just trying to help everyone understand. They're unable to stop these sex thoughts, and they use words, sex words. I'm sure screwed that up. What are you talking about? And this is coming out of people's mouths. I've been listening to them. It's screwed me out. Oh boy, I want a rim shot. I mean, you know. They use all of these sex words. They make a lot of sex jokes, and they use a lot of sex slang. They have sex when they're not even interested in sex. They're not even aroused, then they'll have sex. I know I need to have sex. They constantly look at other sex organs, thighs, breasts, behind, crouch, everything. But the main thing is they have sex when they don't want to have it. They don't even feel like it. They just have sex because it's Friday. Really? It's a week going by. If I don't have sex, wow, my testicles will explode. You know, they just have sex. They use sex to hide their feelings. They use sex if they're stressed to have sex. If they're worried to have sex. If they didn't do well at work to have sex. You know, sex is used for a political kind of thing. Oh, well, I know you don't feel good. Maybe if we do this, you'll feel better. They always cheered you up before, you know, that kind of stuff. And people use sex for power and control and ownership. Because if you have sex with somebody, that means you have captured them. You're the predator, they are the prey. It gives you this feeling of power. And that indication of someone who was really sexually addicted is just a series of relationships, one after the another. They don't know the height of the person. They don't know their zodiac sign. You know, you ask them, what was her name? What was his name? Well, he was tall. I mean, they don't even know. But you can just judge from the series of failures in relationships. That means the mother and son, father and the son, from one series of bad relationships to another, and they keep mimicking the bad relationship. Remember, we went into addictions, how you just look for the same thing. You like, if your father's alcoholic, you try to beat him up by taking it out on another man. You see, so the men, you say, I try to be friends with a woman, say, I can't have a female as a friend. I'm better off with male friends. You hear that a lot. And some men say, I have a lot of female friends. And so they're acting out this script. Because they have a series of bad relationships. And all this is an indication of that kind of sex addiction. Then they lack sex identity. They define themselves by their sexual activity. You know, he sure, got it together, and look at the hammer he's got. The whole value system is based on who they have sex with, or how many people they have sex with. Because that's a sign and symptom of sex addiction. Then they have these sex binges. Like, I guess you associate that with the military, weekend pass kind of thing. But that's a sex binge. And then you get these people that have the binge, and then they'll be abstinent for a month or a year. Oh, they do that. Then you have the people that have sex binges and abstinence, and then you have the masturbators. Because we have a lot of masturbation in the black community. I know you think white people do that. But it's sort of like taking yourself at hand kind of issue here. Getting a hold of yourself. Something got a hold of me. Right. Okay. So people just masturbate. They masturbate before they have sex, after they have sex. I mean, the sex has nothing to do with it. Masturbation is addiction all to itself. And it's in the music, too, as well. In a lot of music has it. And they look at the videos. When they're sexually addicted, they look at sex videos all the time. They're always reading some sex story. They're focusing on who guy had sex with, her caddy or a chauffeur. They're always into these sex stories, whether that girl, what's her name, the one that everybody thinks, Oprah, whether Oprah is a lesbian or not, They're always interested in the sexual behavior of other people, which they get no enjoyment from anyway. Who cares? But they're interested in the sex all the time. Or they'll go into one of these kind of a misguided love affair movies. They like that, where they were kind of tricked, He was no good. He tricked her into having sex when he knew he was no good. They go into all this kind of themes in their movies, She's got to have it, or whatever those things are. Or they use religion, or prophets, or ministers. They start getting so born again, they're worse than a Jehovah's Witness selling of Muhammad's feet. I mean, it's something else, They go into these things. So they hide in religions. They do everything for the church. This church, they're always into these church clubs. They're hiding in religion. They go from one religion to another. Last year they was Muslims. This year they're Zoroastrian. Now they're Quakers. Now they're always into some religion or getting into some mystic occult. They're talking to crystals or they're playing something. They're into something real weird. Because they're medicating themselves for their sexual addiction and they have a sexual attachment. If you watch them, they're doing the same thing they did. If you go to church and you watch some of these people dancing, you don't know whether it's Ike and Tina Turner thing or what. Because they're going through the same moves. Oh, save me. Save what? Your bras, they all wet, they're falling out, they're passing out, they're sexually attached to this whole thing. They're just hiding their sex in it. Anyway, I'm trying to stay medical. Can be at risk if socialized or works with homosexuals. I went through that addiction. Because homosexuality is addiction. People actually get addicted to it. People are actually forced into it. Go into the prison. Ask people about prison. They know how to set up a homosexual addiction. They put the men around them, and after a while they have a couple. Oh yeah, they know the whole steps to getting a person addicted to homosexuality is prison systems. They can develop symptoms or the disease if a close friend has this kind of addiction. They believed in the European sex drive myth. People believe they have a sex drive, like you drive a Mercedes or a bus or something. You have a sex drive. That's a European myth. No bee, tree, insect, animal has a sex drive. They have a reproductive drive, but they don't have a sex drive. That's something Europeans made up. Those are indications of sex addiction, which is very bad. It's very bad to just be into this sex and not into your own life. But nonetheless, people can constantly medicate themselves for being stressed by their social conditions, by their economic conditions, and they use all kinds of things to do that. They use drugs, they use alcohol, whatever's available, they use it. Some people are just addicted to gambling. You have a lot of people addicted to gambling today. They call it the lottery. But they have manufactured addictions to gambling. People addicted to phone sex. They really are.
That's right.
They call up somebody just to hear them breathe. Pay $9, you know, addicted to phone sex. How people. But when you get into these stressful situations, just know that, say, wait a minute, I'm under stress here. Maybe I better do something in self-defense. Get yourself a stress B vitamin complex. Stop doing something in self-defense, because you know that you're going to have some kind of addiction if you're around these white folks, because they use addiction.
That's right.
Use.
That's right.
We are addicted to that. They call it a catechism when they orientated us to be addicted. And now we just addict each other. We do. Someone that is doing just fine, you introduce them to something that you know is addictive.
That's right.
You know, you never try to you give them something that's really addicting. Why don't you just look at this, you know? And they're doing just fine, but you never tried Sara Lee cake? And somebody introduced me to Sara Lee. Me and Sara Lee, that slut, I live with her. I'm telling you. I don't know who turned me on to this woman, but I'm telling you, I live to say it. But I'm telling you, your friends mean no harm because they're junkies themselves. Just look out. You know, you see them buying Cokes all the time. They're addicted to sugar. And sodas have a lot of caffeine in it. They're addicted to the caffeine in the sodas. And they buy soda for you. And they don't mean any harm, but they're addicting you to these things. Anytime somebody's doing something all the time, just question yourself, why are they doing this all the time? Why are they always talking about sex? Why are they always, just ask yourself, why are they doing this all the time? If you can't come up with a reason, you say, well, why are you smoking this all the time? Why are you drinking that soda all the time? Oh, it tastes good. That's an ass right there. Wait a minute. Why are you always cussing and fussing? I mean, because they're addicted to, they don't feel pleasant, so they're going to make everyone around them not feel pleasant. Because they're addicted to that kind of behavior. That's how they beat themselves up. So when you get around these stressful people, get yourself a stress B vitamin complex. Protect yourself. Get some vitamin B6. Get some calcium magnesium to calm your nerves so you won't get acid. Because once your system gets acid, you'll crave the addiction. Be it cigarettes, alcohol, sex, whatever you're addicted to, gambling. Once your system gets acid, you are going to crave your addiction. So the calcium magnesium keeps your system alkaline. If you just want a little spring and feel some little energy, then get some tyrosine, which is the one just below the calcium magnesium on the chart here. Well, most of the addicted folks just don't see themselves as addicted. There's no need even telling them that they are. People addicted to these preachers on television. They won't miss, what's his name, Yates, the black guy. They have all these preachers on television. It used to be Reverend Ike years ago. And they ain't learning nothing from these people. They just getting high off of them.
That's right.
Drug addiction, substance abuse, these are the nutrients we use, as I showed you before, the B complex, the calcium, magnesium, the GABA, glutathione, which is 3 amino acids. They use a mineral called lithium, which the white boys have taken over. and you can only get that prescription. We use phenylalanine, about 2,000 milligrams a day. We use pantothenic acid, about 1,500 milligrams a day. These are nutrients that are used for recovery from some kind of addiction, no matter what the addiction is. I'll show you one more, and then we'll proceed to answer some questions here. These addictions can be overcome. It's not that much of a problem. It's just a matter of trusting yourself. A lot of us just don't trust ourselves unless the master say we're all right. They haven't really started testing your hair. They haven't figured out how to make some money off of it. They just test the urine. But if you're on drugs and you take a drug, it's going to show up in your hair up to 3 to 6 months. Once they figure out how to make some money off of this thing, they got you. Because the urine is out. It's going to pass out through your kidney and your liver and all that sort of stuff, but it's going to stay in your hair. And you can shave your hair off, but it's going to be in your pubic hair. A lot of people shave that anyway. Maybe it's the arm hair. You know, people shave that too. Well, probably the hair on your leg. People got hair somewhere. They're gonna find it. Absolutely. Now remember that everything is a mental illness in psychology. A psychiatrist that gives, a psychologist that gives drugs, we call him a psychiatrist. But everything is a mental illness. Everything. You have oppositional defiance disorder. That's when a teenager argues and tries to say that I'm somebody and I want to do it this way, and Mama, you want me to do it that way. That's defined as a mental illness called oppositional defiance. Then you have developmental expressive writing disorder. That's when a child starts writing big and then end up writing small. Problems writing, and they erase too much. We call that developmental expressive writing disorder. Everything is a mental illness. Then if you suffer from headaches and pain, you say you always say, I got pain in my back. Every morning I wake up with pain in my back. Oh, I got this headache all the time. You know, I don't know, I just get stressed and I get this pain in my shoulder, you know. That is called a pain disorder. You're mentally ill. Then you have the conduct disorder. That's when you skip school. We used to call it just skipping school. If you skip school so many times, that is no longer being truant. That is called a conduct disorder, known as a mental illness. Then you have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which means the teacher can't teach. Because the child doesn't listen to the teacher, because the teacher is boring. So that is known as a mental illness. Then you have caffeine intoxication. Irritability after 2 to 3 cups of coffee. The person can't sleep. The person is up all night. That's the person who's addicted to caffeine and the sodas. The child drinking 2 or 3 sodas is going to be hyped on caffeine. So all of these things are called a mental disorder by the psychologists and psychiatrists. Just as years ago, if you ran away from the plantation, that was called Africanus captius. That was a mental illness. Everything was a mental illness at one time. Mental illness is when you don't follow certain social sets of orders and rules. It's a political and social classification. It has nothing to do with your brain being out of order. That's what I was stressing in the beginning. Addictions are basically a social and political classification for your reaction to your social conditions. If your behavior is inappropriate, if you don't follow the right rules, I'm talking about the right rules in society, that can be called a mental illness. If you follow the right rules in society and you do that, they say, especially following the rules of the European culture,
Right.
they say you have good manners. That's following European culture. And if you don't follow the culture's rules correctly, they say you have bad manners. If you follow the rules, then you are not mentally ill, because that's a political and social classification. There used to be a classic example of that is when the farmers, I think it's in England, when the farmers had the land, and the feudal kings would let them, it was common land, and then you could cross your sheep across the land, and then the king decided this land is private. And nobody could walk on it because it belonged to him. Now the person been for years, and one family after another been crossing this road with their sheep. Now if they cross the road, they're committing a crime. Now their behavior is called criminal behavior, which is classification for a mental illness. It's just a matter of who has the rules and who's defining the rules. You see, a person has a drinking problem if they get drunk a lot and they're white. But if you get drunk a lot and you're black, you're alcoholic. But if you're used to just a drinking problem, oh, they have that problem, you see. It's just a social classification. And we've got to start defining things for our benefit. I mean, if it's harming us as a people, then it's something that's out of order.
That's right, that's right.
And that's how we define things. And there's a lot of us that get addicted to things in the society that need help. We get addicted to violence, which is easy to do, from Arnold Schwarzenegger and the guy Rambutt. All these people who just parade violence at us all the time, and then the children pick up on this, and then they start getting punished because of what's being socially taught to them. And then we define them as being mentally ill when it's actually the fellows who are creating this to have the mental illness, and they're just reflecting the political and social environment that they're in.
That's plain.
That's what we have here. People expressing the social and political environment that they're in. We're trying to medicate ourselves with sex, medicate ourselves with violence, medicate ourselves with coffee, with sugar, with chocolate, with, of course, we medicate ourselves. The easiest way is with sugar, of course. That's the easiest way to do it. But we medicate ourselves with just putting down the race. That's done a lot. We just sit around and put down our race. Niggas ain't no good. You know, we medicate ourselves by our social condition. All we're saying is we haven't come up with a good solution. That's what we're saying. We don't have a solution. Why don't we say that instead of, niggas ain't no good, you can't trust them. They ain't gonna support you. They always, you know, no, we haven't come up with a solution. That's all you're saying. But we medicate our inability to come up with a solution by saying, the niggas ain't no good.
Right.
You see, we get into that kind of addictive behavior. And we get into the behavior of just analyzing and watching white people. We always want to know what they're doing. Queen died, Bill Clinton, we just reading about them all the time. Instead of studying ourselves, solution for ourselves, we spend all our time studying them. The Illuminati, the secret order, the Boule, who cares? We need our own secret order. You know? I mean, we just sit down and just start medicating ourselves and treating ourselves.
Right.
Because we are a race under repair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We just won't say we're colonized, and as a colonized people, we have certain things that go with it. Addiction is one. And that comes under those major categories: impulse disorder, behavior disorder, thought disorder. There's a little thing that happens with men and women. We have a problem communicating. The men like to be intellectual, sit around and say intellectual things, and then they want to talk emotional. And the ladies like to say how they feel, and then they come out with all this emotional stuff. No big deal. Then when we try to talk to each other, the men are talking intellectual, the women are talking feelings, and then we blame each other for being male and female.
Right.
I mean, it's stupid. What we got to start doing is just translating for each other. Okay, now you said that was your feeling. Well, how do you think? Okay, now you said that's how you think. But how do you feel?
Yes,
I mean, let's translate what you're saying, because I'm in a different language. So we got to start translating more, but we don't translate for each other. We say, you got these games with you. I don't want to deal with you because you're just full of games. They're not games, they're rituals. Each ethnic group in Africa has rituals. You have certain rituals that you perform. Your kids can walk around, well, I know when she does that, she's going to do that. A child knows your rituals. You know, but when an adult sees you do rituals, it's a game. No, everybody's culture has rituals and ceremonies, and then the individuals in the culture have their own rituals and ceremonies. Then the family has its own rituals and ceremonies. And we're not doing that. We're not defining what is ours and what is theirs.
Right.
So we start looking at each other, and we instead of just blaming this, we start helping each other process this information so we can solve these problems here. Because we're really in bad shape here. We're addicted to violence, beating up each other. lying to each other, addicted to lying, addicted to the phone sex, addicted to Whoopi Goldberg, and there are people that are junkies for these talk shows.
That's right.
You know, they really are. They're addicted to them. Like, you can't talk to them unless you know the language of what happens as the world turns, or whatever, churns, or whatever happens. If you don't know this language, you can't talk to them. You really can't. But we have one language that we need, and that should be help. If you're doing something, and you don't know why you're doing it, then maybe you ought to stop. You know, just stop like anybody else would do. If you go into the woods and you can't find your way out, stop and look around and try to figure out how to get out of there. Just don't be running from tree to tree. I don't know which way you're going. Stop. Look around. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're eating what you just stop.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have to say, but we try to look for these solutions that are not there. There's no solution in drugs that's going to solve anything, in violence and sex and lying and shopping sprees. You're just solving the problems with the Rothschilds.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
Yes,
solving
sir.
your problems.
Yes, sir.
Because the end result is they're after the money.
Mm-hmm.
They just want the money out of your pocket. And the best way to do that is get you addicted to something. So they can keep their cash flow and guarantee their market share.
Yes, sir.
That's all it's about. You're just on another level of being a slave. And all I'm saying is just run away from the plantation. If you think the plantation is an addiction, then run away from that. Because that's the biggest plantation we have.
That's right. That's right.
There are people that are addicted to going to jail. They stay out a while and you know, right, they don't know how to socialize. The white boys know that. If they get them young enough, they're going to addict them to the system. Call it recidivism or something like that. Everyone knows how to addict us except us. I'm just trying to say we're going to have to start turning this thing around. Say, if I want to get addicted to doing the right thing, I'll introduce myself to it, I'll reintroduce myself to it, and I'll socialize, make it a part of my social life, and then by then it will be an addiction. It's easy to get addicted. We just have to start looking at the positive addiction and how to do that way.
That's right.
I can get addicted to this. Yeah, I can do that. Or no problem. No problem at all. People get addicted to dancing. You see them, they be dancing. There's no music. Stand on the corner dancing. Children, once you get them addicted, they'll do it all the time. And they're not even conscious that they're doing it. So once you start to get addicted to this good behavior, you want to be conscious that you're doing it. People ask me, how do I eat? I said, I don't even know how I eat. I don't even think about it. They say, what you eat? I said, let me see, what did I eat? I count bags. I ate 2 apples a day and 3 bananas, and then I'll be counting and stuff. They said, that's all you ate? I said, yeah, I was full, so that's all I could think of doing, you know. You have to look at it that way. Once you get into a positive addiction, you don't even think about it.
Yes, sir.
It's just those negative ones you start thinking about.
That's right.
That's when you have to start switching brands, you know, going from this brand to that brand and that brand to keep that addiction going. Got to keep the fantasy going, the illusion that I don't want to grow up, the Peter Pan syndrome. I don't want to grow up. I don't want to grow up. Click your little heels and go back. I don't want to grow up. You know, stay a child, and that's what addiction allows you to be. You can hide. You don't have to grow up. I'll answer some of the questions about addiction. Do we have time?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
answer some of them. If there are any. No one has addiction, so there's no question. Yes, ma'am.
Now, are you saying that the treatment for any addiction, be it sex, caffeine, nicotine, the same amino acids and vitamins will treat all behavioral addictions?
Yeah. That's the same set of vitamins and minerals. I may shift a little bit, but basically I will use the same ones. The vanadyl sulfate and the chromium for the sugar addiction. I always treated illnesses as addiction. That's probably the way I look at it. I know the person got into this behavior, and the behavior itself, along with whatever they're doing, brought them into this condition. They got addicted into the disease process. So I'll use some behavior controllers. The glutamine, about 2,000 milligrams once or twice a day. The vanadyl sulfate and chromium for the sugar addiction. Something to clean up the yeast infection, which triggers addictions. And from there, I know that they're chemically, nutritionally sound to handle. And what I'm working on from then on is spiritual and emotional kind of issues. But the physical part is taken care of. But if we don't straighten out the physical part, we're not going to win the battle. But Roger Williams, who works with alcoholics in Texas, he uses glutamine to get rid of the craving. He successfully got rid of the craving, and with his treatment, which he's proven over the past 20 years, just the nutrients alone, he will give an alcoholic a drink, and they will not take another drink because their system biochemically rejects it. You can't get addiction once your system is sound. It's like a child. If you can give them a drink, they'll spit it out, and you can't get them to take another one. The system is too sound. Yes.
You were saying that one of the first steps toward recovery is to bond with your culture. And I thought, but we've lost our, we're more or less a destroyed people. So how can you bond to something that you aren't even aware of or you're living outside of? We've adopted a foreign culture, so how do we introduce sick people to a lost culture?
That's what they call in Orthodox treatment psychosocial awareness. Usually, like if you go into like the system that the Muslims use in a prison, they knew the men were angry, and they gave them something to be angry about other than themselves. They just refocused the anger to white devil, what they call it. They refocused the anger, but they never changed the anger. Once you refocus the anger, then you can build that little cultural element into it. And you start saying, you're the original black man, and da 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 da. But you can't do anything until you get that anger out of the way. Just refocus it on something positive. And that's how he worked that system so well. We call it psychosocial awareness. As you stated, we are pretty much colonized and have adopted the cultural ways of our colonizers. That is pretty hard because we still follow that form of government, and even African states that are free are following the European state structure, which in itself will destroy African people. So all the things we're following are given to us by our slave master, and we don't see that as being destructive. We don't see European culture as being destructive because the oppressed don't see that. So what you do is you can't change all of that overnight, so you just refocus what they're doing. If you have someone that's used to hustling, and like a pimp who's been hustling other women and knowing how to sell sex, you just get them to sell newspapers. You just change what they're hustling, but you never change the hustling element. And that's probably why that system works so well, because they never got rid of that kind of addiction. They just shifted on to something else. So someone who's trying that, I would do that. A person who's obsessive compulsive, I would just let them be obsessive compulsive over a religion or something. Let it give them a positive outlet for that compulsive, and then start looking at that compulsion after you get them away from the drug. Hold on.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
Is it any more questions? Doctor,
Like heroin, okay, and it's like a cure for heroin, not a cure, but you know what I mean, like so you're warned up for they had this thing with methadone, and then they say that that's another addiction.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. What would you think?
Heroin addiction is quite popular again. Methadone is a synthetic heroin, which is more dangerous than heroin. When I was in the business, the guys trying to get off the methadone, we switch them back to heroin because we detox the person off the heroin and the methadone. So we switch them back to the heroin and detox them off the heroin rather than try it off the methadone. It's rougher. The chemicals that we use for that, what you call supplements, using a lot of that GABA and glutamine. So that's the amino acid, but you have to increase the strength of it. And you have to do something with the sex drive. Sex drive usually is kind of, the woman becomes a part of the heroin and is treated like
the heroin itself. Kind of sick way to look at sex. It's like a person on crack who has sex with crack. I mean, the woman is just another form of crack. You understand what I'm saying? Everything is defined out of that reality of methadone or crack or heroin. But the problem with the methadone is now they have street rhythm, because the rhythm is laundered outside of Puerto Rico and it's sold back into this country on the streets. You have street rhythm and addiction. Those are some of the supplements, but I didn't really come down very hard on codependency, which is the whole purpose of addiction, to get you or someone in this room addicted, and all of us adjust our behavior to support your addiction or talk about your addiction and get rid of your addiction. So all of us develop what we call codependent behavior, and then we become worse off than you. If you are not here, we will create another you, because we have codependent behavior. And that's the objective of getting a child on Ritalin or a person on methadone or some other drug to cause codependent behavior. Because codependence is very difficult to get rid of. It kind of slips away every time you grab it and think you've gotten rid of it. It slips out of your hands. Codependent behavior. That's what black people have developed. We will create a crack addict, even if one is not even here, because we have codependent behavior. And we look for this kind of distortion in our community. Or else we were created by the way we treat each other, the way we treat our children. We will create the crack addict. Like Franz Fanon said, if the door isn't there, we will make a back door and come in it anyway. And we will create these addicts. And it's a self-perpetuating system created by the Europeans that works like a charm. I mean, the icons that children idolize of drugs, you know, football players and basketball players, and so people just say, oh yeah, you become a star and you get on drugs, you become the mayor, you're on drugs, you become, so everything is like, to us it may not seem okay, but it's socially approved. It's all right to be on drugs and get cured, as they say. but it's just promoted so well, the addiction. Homosexual addiction, you got the homosexual black men on TV. It's a television show with a homosexual black man. RuPaul. No, that's the transvestite.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the guy who starred in Back to the Future. Back to the Future, the white fellow. Family Matters.
Michael J.
Michael J. Fox has a homosexual black man on his show. He's a star.
Oh, okay.
And I'm saying they're pushing this. It's no accident. They're pushing it quite well, and even in the cartoons. Yeah, it's in the cartoons, and it's in the children's books. And in that is also the drug addiction and the female prophylactics, rubbers pushed. So they are pushing that all. It's not just the adults, it's all the way down to kindergarten where the exposure is being done. Yeah. So the drugs is not, so the older black folks, I guess, is a big deal, but not to the younger people. It's just part of the culture, the hip-hop culture. That's what it's defined as. So it's just...
Other than the drug, it's like I was saying, other than the drug itself, there is, like what you would say, different type of medication other than that.
Oh yeah. We use the glutamine, and we use the tyrosine for the craving, and you can use niacinamide, which is a B vitamin. I think they call it B3, which is used to control this kind of craving. But it's the social and psychological part of heroin is to get you down under the depression, and that way you be cool, because you're under it in the basement like. And then with the speed, you're speeding past depression. With the crack and cocaine, you're speeding past depression, but the thing is, depression is what, the condition is what's driving the whole thing. And since we oppress each other better, we are creating the addictions ourselves. Yeah, and then we blame others, like we usually do, kind of routine. It's pretty bad, yes sir.
Yeah, I had a question. You mentioned more or less that sometimes when you speak to the culture, culture as a way of remedy, for these ills and so forth. My question would be, what could we do as a university, Red Sox books, in this group in this room to counteract, this system and so forth, and perhaps provide maybe, some form of safe haven or some type of refuge.
It's what you're doing. It may not seem revolutionary to probably the people in the audience, but what you're doing is quite revolutionary. You are presenting the culture as a living thing. The culture is not in the book. The culture is the people. The history is not the book. The history is the people. And this is the living culture and living history, and this is where we live. This is African culture. It's not going to get any more African than this.
Right.
And then when we start looking outside of ourselves, that's when we lose it. We have to look right in this room for our solution. And right in this room is Africa. Africa is not a piece of land. It's an emotional and spiritual way of being.
Right.
And people think that Africa is, but you can go right to Africa and there's AIDS, there's crack addicts, there's straightening hair.
Western culture.
And people say, if I need to go to Africa, go to the pyramids. Oh yeah, right. What about the people that live there? Right there every day walking on the ground. It's a way of thinking. And this is really Africa. But we don't see this as Africa. We think we're just some black people in the room.
Right.
But I see this as Africa. And that's what the university and the whole thing about is for us to see this is Africa, and we are African people, and they ain't going to get no more African than this right here.
Right there. And I agree with that. And I'm glad you said that. Because there is something guiding what we're doing here. Because this last week, matter of fact, the 12th, we had a gentleman come in out of North Jersey, a school teacher, and he dealt with goal setting. Because you mentioned earlier about writing down goals, posting them on the wall, and putting them up around so you can see them and remind yourself of your goals and what you're striving for, and also the obligation that it takes to fulfill those particular purposes and objectives and so forth. And that gentleman, Baruti Kafeli, we have his tape available in the back for anybody that's interested in reviewing the tape, but he'll be back next month in October, dealing more concretely with goal setting and how you can apply to a classroom or a school setting, but apply to any situation that you may be trying to deal with and trying to get yourself out of. You can use the same principle and tactic for any area of your life that you're desiring to improve, so you can set your objectives. And also earlier you mentioned about attaching oneself to African culture and an African way of life, even if you have to become addicted to that as opposed to becoming addicted to the European forms and ways and so forth. We have a gentleman coming in November, Baba Ifa Karate. He's going to be dealing with the significance of traditional African religions, past, present, and future, because it's very important for us to understand some of our pathways and culture of the past, and perhaps we can attach ourselves to that to carry us through the current phase that we're going through at this point. So the reason why I've thrown that up is to let everyone know that there is a guiding force guiding us and also moving us in ways that we may not understand fully. But there's a reason why you're in this room. There's a reason why you've heard about this particular forum. And some people may have heard about it that didn't come out this evening, and some people didn't hear about it. There's a reason for all that, but there's a reason why you're here. And we hope that you stay along with this process, because this is not an event that we're taking up. It's a process that we're engaged in. And we want to take us coming together, sticking together, and coming underneath that guidance that we're being guided by. You can call it ancestral guidance, you can call it Allah guidance, you can call it Jesus, whatever you want to term it. But there is a guidance amongst us today, guiding us up out of European or what you call white domination.
That's right.
And we thank Dr. Afrika for being part of that, speaking to us. And also, he'll be back in a few months. I have his schedule. He don't have a schedule yet, but and I have some things scheduled for the next upcoming months. The brother's gonna be speaking at Mercer County College. He doesn't know yet, but he's gonna be on the college campus. We're gonna be a couple places that
drafted him, yes.
Yeah, so we'll be moving this from the land trust. We'll move over to downtown James Kearney campus for the next 3 months, and also we'll be back here at the land trust over the next 3 months for some programs. You have some of the details in the flyers and packets that you have there in your hand. But if you have any more questions for Dr. Afrika, feel free. Otherwise, we'll ask Brother Abdullah to close out. Dr. Afrika has some final words.
That's it. Yeah.
What's your vitamin or mineral for high blood pressure to take the place of the partner?
You want to use, basically I use a lot of odorless garlic and hawthorn berries and vitamin E for that. Yes. And then on the amino acid side, we use phenylalanine. We use a amino acid called GABA, benzoic acid. GABA is commonly called. And that helps control behavior and stress factors that it may induce that kind of disease reaction. But it's completely maintained and gotten rid of with the supplements over the years. That's what I've used for that. The thing with this information about addictions is people get into this whole thing with knowledge, and then they start seeing everybody is sick. You know, this person is sick. I'm going to stay away from them. That person is sick. You know, and everybody starts seeing everybody sick and staying away from everybody. That's not the purpose of knowledge. Everybody's in a process of getting rid of or getting over their sickness, and the process may last until they're 75 or 80 years old. As long as you see the person is making attempts and into a process of getting rid of their illness, you can deal with them. But if they're making no attempt at all, I mean, just saying they're sick because they're hyper or they're sick because they're this, but if you say, oh, they make an attempt or they try and they do listen, you should stick with them because you just as sick on some level yourself. I mean, all of us look in the mirror and we don't see ourselves. I walk up to people and say, what's that over there when I'm examining? I say, what's that bump over there? And they be trying to look. I say, your face? What you looking for? They be in the mirror and they don't see themselves clearly. But all of us, as long as we're in the process of overcoming it, and sometimes a person is working on one addiction and they're letting the other ones go. And you just see the ones they're letting go. It takes a lot of energy to work on one. They make working on one major one to them and letting those little ones just kind of go. And you see the little ones they letting go and say, oh, they ain't trying. But they're trying on a level that you're not even aware of. They're in the process of working on stuff before you met them.
Right.
You have to realize when you meet people, you're walking in on the middle of a movie. And that's the way you have to see it. And there's some of the things about themselves they can verbalize, and some things about themselves they cannot verbalize. Just because you understand them doesn't mean that they understand that you understand them. That's another level altogether. But we get kind of hard on each other, you know. And I'm just trying to say, lighten up. You know, give the person a break, you know. I mean, everyone is not totally aware of themselves in every moment of the day. They just do things that they just are unaware that they're doing. And you're sitting there and you're aware of they're doing it, they look at them. They're not trying, and all that kind of stuff coming down them. All of a sudden you're a psychologist. I did this stuff for 10 years. I may have went over it lightly with you, but I did this for 10 years. I saw the same person twice a month for 2 years sometimes, working on little bits of problems. I worked in women's prison with drug addicts, men's prison with drug addicts. I work with drug addicts in the military. I work with paranoid schizophrenics. I work with chronic bedwetters. I work with masturbators. I work with people that thought they were orange and get mad, you know, because you didn't peel them. I work with people that thought they were a chair and I had to sit on them so they'd be comfortable. You know, I work with people that just trying to eat their own arm. I work with people that ate bowel movements. I work with people. You know, they're in a process. But I was just going over it with you, and you know, but don't think that I don't know this whole thing here. How people just go to sleep and don't trust going to sleep. Afraid of going to sleep. When you're a prisoner in your mind, you're in a hell of a prison.
That's right. That's a fact.
And some people are just afraid to be by themselves. They'll turn on the television, the radio, talk on the phone because they're scared of themselves. That's a hell of a feeling.
Yes, sir.
You got to go kind of slow with people now. Think they're going to change everything just because you read some book or heard some lecture? Be for real. You know? So I'm just trying to say is that people in the process of change, they may be changing some things that you're not aware of, but they're still changing some things. And some things are more difficult for them to change because it's attached to their mother, attached to their father, attached to the death of someone, attached to losing a job. some people go to work and they say, I've been working 2 years, I should be getting fired next year. They're all stressed about something that doesn't even happen. You know, you don't know that. So they got one stress on top of another stress on top of another stress, and then you come up with them and say, you sure look bad today. You know, you go off. You don't realize that you just did it to them. You got to kind of ease into, all of us, because all of us are under treatment, just kind of ease into, just test the water a little bit. How you doing today? How do you feel? I said, I'm doing all right. My aunt used to do that to me. She said, how you feel? I said, I'm doing all right. She said, I didn't ask you how you were doing. I asked you how you feel.
Right.
Because it's more important about how you feel about what you're doing than what you're doing.
That's the truth.
She used to run that down and say, I didn't ask you about how you're doing. I asked you about how you feel. And I used to stop and back up on that one. I said, oh, I think I feel all right. She said, okay, okay. And you want to get a joint? Well, we used to smoke pot together. But she was my aunt now. Good weed, though. Nonetheless, I just wanted to be a little more human about this healing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
That's all.
sir. Yes, sir. Great. All I have to say, and I'm going to put a period on this because the doc said it all, as always, the community university and Razak's books, thanks, and the community of Trenton. Thanks, Dr. Llaila Afrika, for coming down and giving us his wisdom, and may we use it, and may we continue to speak for it. Right, Brother Razak? Did the number been drawn yet for the winner? Let's announce that again.
Miss Cunningham.
Miss Cunningham, do we have a lucky winner here? Okay, in the meantime, we have all of Dr. Afrika's tapes. We have his book, so pick them up. If you don't have the money now, please get on Razak's book list and keep attending all of our lectures because we have many lecture series. Dr. Llaila Afrika is just one in a series of great lectures that we're going to have here at the University of Trenton. You want the young fellas, young man to go out?
Pour that. Anybody.
Let's just shake it up a little bit. And see who's the winner in here. Reach up here and pull one ticket out, right? Call it out. The number on there.
5288513.
5288
513.
513.
Over here.
Oh, you lucky winner there. Okay. And we have one more winner.
What we're going to do next, we're going to wrap off tonight's tape. Someone got it already.
Is this, where's it going to be the night's tape? Oh, this is going to be for the night's tape?
tape.
This is for the night's tape. You get a free copy of the night's lecture on tape, courtesy of Razak's books. Who is the lucky winner, young man?
5288501.
5288
Wait a minute.
Don't tell me you won twice now.
No, I got 5.
Bring that up again.
5288501.
5288
I got 51.
No one has that ticket? We got to go back in the bag again?
51.
501.
Yeah.
Now,
None of the company can win this. None of the company, their family can win this one. Okay. All right.
5288493. 5288493.
Mom, we are the lucky people here tonight. You want Mom to get this prize? We got to put another one. We're going to got a whole family tree here. They might say we fixed this one and we get one with another one now.
5288486.
Say it one more time.
5288486.
All right, you lucky one to read it out.
you got it.
That match? We got an official match, brother.
Stand up here on video, brother.
We have our video here. Look right in that camera. Give a shout out to our brother. Who's our brother here with us? Look right in there and say, I support the University of Trenton. The University of Trenton. And I support Razak's book. And I support Razak's book.
I support Razak's book.
Glad to have you here, my brother. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you. Please come again.